there was candy hearts on the table. And he said, whatever these say, you have to do. And I didn't respond. And then can we leave? Can we leave? And he said, yes. And then I tried to open the door and he slammed it shut. And then it was over for me. Why didn't you just say something? There's a reason why. And that goes back to victim blaming and assuming that you know the situation when you don't. Why didn't you just say something? Why didn't you just tell your parent? Because I couldn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell my parent. When you are groomed and you have a predator, and that's what they are, they prey on their victims, they target them, they isolate them, then they make a move. It's a process. And they are so intentional. And think about this. I couldn't escape this man. I remember trying to tell them, and all I could see was my 6'3" perpetrator standing between the two of us. He knew where I lived. He reminded me, I know where you live. Hey, I can call your sister out of class. So I was in fear that if I said anything, he knew everything about my life. He made sure of that. He made sure that I knew that as well. And so I thought, well, it won't be that bad. We'll go from school to the soccer field. And I could not have been more wrong. He called my mom and he said, hey, we may be a few minutes late for warm up. I accidentally left my coaching bag at home. And I knew as soon as he did that, I was
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Chad Prather Show. We're going to dig deep into it today. I'm excited. I am excited about this conversation. Before we climb into that, though, I want you to go where podcasts are offered. You know the drill. Leave us a 5-star rating. It's what we deserve. And I want you to leave me a review. Don't care what you say. You can tell me you don't like me. I would love that, actually. You could say anything you want to say, but anything you say, even negatively, still drives us further up the charts, and we're doing pretty damn good. So I appreciate you guys. Go to watchchad.com. That's where all the fun stuff is. Find me out on the road doing live shows. It's not even the middle of the year, and I'm tired. And the second half of the year is going to be busy, busy, busy. I don't know if you guys have realized this or not, but whenever I put anything out on social media in regards to Jeffrey Epstein or talk about human trafficking, child trafficking, sexual abuse, those tend to get the biggest responses. I get tons of reaction. I think that if there's anything that all of us as decent human beings can agree with, is that there's some people that need a millstone hung around their neck and they need to be tossed into the deepest part of the sea. And it's just a fact. That's the society we live in. And I think every one of us are a little bit frustrated that we're not seeing more justice done. Why aren't the lights being turned on so we can watch these roaches scurry and know which ones to step on and squash? The swift hand of justice just doesn't move fast enough, if it moves at all. And so I want to dig into this topic again. I would refer you guys to go back and watch numerous episodes from years past where we exposed a lot of things that people didn't know about people like Jeffrey Epstein and other abusers and other traffickers, and some deep dives that we took on that because it's highly educational. But what's scary is that you don't have to find celebrity abusers out there. They live among us. I don't know when's the last time you guys have jumped on the internet to do a little search about who might be living in your neighborhood. The scary thing is they may be living in your neighborhood and you still can't find out. So we're living in a weird world. A world in which our sense of right and wrong has been perverted, and, well, there's evil among us, quite honestly. And so I want to talk about that today. And for many of you, this will be a hard episode to listen to or a hard episode to watch because we're going to get very vulnerable on some things today. And in order to do that, I want to welcome my very special guest, Kayleigh Kozak. Welcome.
Thanks for having me on. Thanks
How
for
you
this
doing?
Humid weather that you brought me to.
Welcome to Texas. So you left the oven and came into the rainforest, basically, because you came out of Arizona where it's very dry.
That's how it feels today. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and it is muggy.
It is muggy.
CJ, my girlfriend CJ, everybody knows CJ, she texted me. She went to her daughter's little field day today at the school, and she said, today is disgusting.
Yeah, that's a good word.
Yeah.
That's how I would describe it.
So and here in this particular area where we live, it's very woody. I live backed up to a green belt back here where it's kind of swampy. We actually found a snake in the pool yesterday.
Oh.
Yeah, a little hog-nosed snake. Pretty good size, wouldn't you say, Steve? Pretty good, yeah. And so he's just back there looking for frogs and hanging out. And so that means I'm going to burn down the woods back there.
I have a pet snake.
Do you really?
Yeah, well, I don't. My son does.
Yeah?
Yeah.
The problem that I have with that is I've often thought about that. I'm not into that kind of cold-blooded creatures, nah. But at times I've thought about, because I'm sort of a practical joker, and I've thought about getting a snake. The problem is feeding the damn thing, and I'm not into the mice cruelty part of it, where you just toss them in there. Because we used to have, when we were in college, we had in our dormitory, we had guys that had snakes, and then we would go in there and take bets on how long the mouse could live.
Well, that's mean.
We
just do frozen.
Do you?
Yeah.
That's the thing.
I don't do anything.
Will they eat them? They'll eat them frozen?
Sometimes you don't even get to drop it in. It depends how hungry they are. It's the easiest pet I have. I'll tell
get
you.
it out of your hand.
I don't do that. It depends on how hungry they are. They'll just get it.
How many kids do you have?
5.
You got 5 kids. So you and your husband, God bless you. Y'all have a busy home.
Very, very busy.
I'm going to read something that you posted. Just a little piece of something that you posted this morning.
Oh, this morning.
On Instagram. I mean, this is fresh. So you said, and if those of you are watching, and this is a few days past, but you said this. You were telling a little bit about your story. You said, things like this are hard to share, especially publicly, because someone will always have something to say. Someone will always assume they know better and what it should have been. The reality is I was 13, I never stood a chance, and he made sure to set it up that way.
Yeah.
What's the story?
So I am, unfortunately, a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. And I was sexually abused by my PE teacher, who was also my club soccer coach for 2 years, my 6th and 7th grade year, when I was just 12 and 13.
I have no words for what, I mean, it's demonic, right? That's a spiritual thing. It's more than, because that is an unnatural.
Yeah.
That's an understatement to say it, but it's an unnatural lust. I don't understand what drives anyone, men or women, but specifically men, to create that environment and then act on it. But that's what happened. You were 6th grade?
Yeah. I had just moved across country back to Arizona, and it's so crazy. And that's why I had also put in that post, it's pages of details that surround these topics, right? Because it's hard to understand. But he was a predator, and he preyed on me before I was even in the state of Arizona.
How?
Well, because when we moved, it was after 9/11, my dad was transferred back to Arizona to work for American Express. Mm-hmm. And my parents felt horrible about moving me in middle school. Middle school is hard anyways. I have a middle schooler, right? I'm just going into high school. But, middle school, it's difficult. And so I loved playing soccer, and they wanted to do anything they could to set me up to have something to look forward to. So once they bought their house, they called around to different soccer clubs, and my mom was able to speak with him on the phone before I even was in the state of Arizona. Hey, we're moving across country. My daughter will be in 6th grade. She loves soccer. You're the closest soccer club. When our tryouts, how can we get her there? And so unknowingly, my mom had already revealed a lot of information to him. Hey, we don't know anybody. Hey, she's vulnerable. Hey, I mean, it's looking back, and you don't think about that in the moment. He knew. He already knew before I was even there.
Hey guys, I want to welcome back to the program one of our old friends, Fume. I don't know if you've heard it or not, but the flavored air category, that's a thing. It's quickly becoming a leading alternative to vaping and smoking. Yeah, it's a whole new movement towards better habits, led by Fume themselves. Listen, we've all got bad habits. I've got some, you've got some, we've all got some. And let's talk about bad habits. Sometimes you're out with friends and they're all reaching for those bad habits, and you feel the urge to not be left out. So you reach for your bad habit, or you try to borrow one of theirs. Well, what if I was to tell you there's a better alternative that will help you kick that bad habit in an enjoyable way? And it's something you can take out with you and use anywhere. Fume, it's an award-winning flavored air device. That's right, flavored air isn't like vaping. If vapor was compared to sticky soda, well, Fume cords, they're closer to like herbal teas. It actually is not bad for you. Fume has lots of delicious flavors to choose from. They got the crisp mint, the orange vanilla, the flavored air. You can satisfy your oral fixation through a passive diffusion system that utilizes no electronics, no vapor, no combustion. It's going to draw the flavor into your mouth. Fume's going to fill the void, ditching those bad habits that you have out there, and you can still have something to reach for when the time comes. It's not a vape. There's no vapor. You can use it anywhere. No nicotine. It's not addictive. Non-toxic flavors. It's a guilt-free alternative. No batteries. You don't even have to charge the thing. And guess what? If you're like me, you can fidget with it. That's right. It's going to calm the anxiety, give you something to do with your hands. It's got the magnets, got the snaps, got the clicks. Check it out. Fume has served over 300,000 customers, and you can be their next success story. For a limited time, use my code CHAD, I spell it Chad, to get a free gift with your journey pack. Head over to tryfume.com. That's tryfum.com. Use promo code Chad. You can scan the QR code there on the screen to get a free gift with your order today. That's tryfume, F-U-M, tryfume.com/Chad. Don't forget, use promo code Chad. Was there a pattern? I mean, after things came out, and we're getting ahead in the story, but was there a pattern? Did you guys discover a pattern with this guy? Were there other victims, or did he just set his sights on you?
So there are other known there's no other known documented victims. So I can't say that for certain. I believe in my heart, and I believe before I die, another victim will come forward. Yeah. But as far as a pattern, there was a pattern with me. And looking back, and I've been in therapy now for 2 years. I never went to therapy when I was younger, and we can get into all that. But I have looked back, and I've learned so much and realized so many things. For so many years, I said, what happened to me wasn't that bad. That's how I would tell, I didn't really tell anybody, but if I ever said anything, that's how I would start it. Well, what happened to me wasn't that bad. And it's interesting because from the moment you're violated, you're told to stay silent by your perpetrator. Yeah. And then if you do turn them in and go through the judicial process, you're told to stay silent. So you're conditioned through this entire process to stay silent. And then if you're lucky enough to get to therapy, then they want you to talk, but you've been told for X amount of time that you can't talk about it. Mm-hmm. And so, looking back, I would say, what happened to me wasn't that bad. No, it was that bad. And what happened to me was common and is even more common nowadays with teachers sexually abusing and assaulting their students and molesting them.
Hey guys, you know what? I just fueled up the truck, and guess what? Everything's still really expensive. Now, by the time you pay off your monthly bills, there's not much left. So you're going to end up swiping those credit cards. It's going to trap you in that high interest credit card debt. Now, if you're a homeowner, American Financing can help you. That's right. Interest rates have dropped into the 5s. You heard me correctly, into the 5s. Now, that's much lower than your credit card interest rate. And American Financing is saving customers an average of $854 a month by using the cash in their home to pay off high interest debt. That's $10,000 a year. Now, you can make the free 10-minute call to see how much you could save. They're never going to charge you any upfront fees. If you start today, you may be able to delay 2 mortgage payments. So call American Financing, 888-675-4090. That's 888-675-4090, or visit AmericanFinancing.net. NMLS 182334, NMLSConsumerAccess.org. APR for rates in the 5 start at 6.799% for well-qualified borrowers. Call 888-675-4090 for details about credit costs and terms. You're welcome.
And it's interesting, before we started taping, you were telling me a story that you said, well, there's a specific circumstance that I can't talk about. So once again, you're still silent.
Yes. And that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
That's the reality. But I think what's important to go off of that is I can't talk about it because of his choices. So what's interesting about being a victim.
And that's in regard, by the way, just to clarify, that's in regards to an ongoing pursuit of a legal affair that which we won't get into.
Yeah, that he chose. This is all a chain reaction of his choices. And what's interesting about being a victim is you are in the driver's seat. You don't ever, they'll tell victims, take your story back, be brave, own it. You can't do that when someone else is in the driver's seat of it. Yeah. And so there's nothing fair about being a victim. You are at the mercy of your perpetrator. You're at the mercy of the judicial system. You are at the mercy of whatever legality things are happening. It's awful. And it's all a chain reaction of one person's selfish, disgusting choices.
Well, and as you said, you think there'll probably be a victim at some point in time that'll come out. And when you look at certain patterns, it's rarely kept to one victim.
Absolutely.
The pattern
There's
tends to be.
There's never just one victim.
There never is. It's just like the person that gets pulled over for drinking and driving and says, I just had 2 beers. You never just had 2 beers. It's, So he's a club soccer coach. He's a PE teacher at the school.
Yeah. So ironically, we didn't know that. My mom only knew that he was the club soccer coach, and we went to the open house the same week we had moved back to Arizona. We had just met him, And we went to open house and there he was. And we had no idea. What's even crazier is my mom actually took a job at the school, so they were coworkers. I was sitting there thinking, because I was reading this story today.
Your post.
Yeah.
And you went into some detail.
And we can go further into that if you want.
We can, we will. And we went into that, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, I just want to end someone's life in this situation. As a father of 3 daughters, as a person who it's like as a red-blooded American man,
yeah,
I can't imagine. We'll get into that. So your mom, and your mom really didn't do anything wrong.
No, my parents didn't do anything wrong.
In that, did she feel a sense of guilt, like she had done something? Because I think there is. Here's the thing. There are so many things that we were laughing about something that's actually really ironic. In that, you got here, you jumped in an Uber, and you came over, and I sent you a thing. I said, "Are you making it okay?" And you're like, "Yeah, I'm doing good." I said, "I like for my people to be okay when they get in a strange car."
Yeah.
And you responded back. It said, isn't it funny? We used to tell people not to get into a car with a stranger.
Yeah.
And now we pay them.
Yes.
To get
now
in the
we're
car with a
requesting
stranger.
and paying them to take us somewhere. And that's the reality that we're in. But so what's interesting, and we can totally get into that story. I don't talk about it too much. This will be actually one of the first times.
Yeah, let's do it.
So
to the degree you're comfortable.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think what's important though for people to understand is that it's not just that one incident, like that one isolated incident. And people always think when we need to get away from the stigma of look for the scary guy in the van. We don't teach people or children to look for the charming narcissist who's grooming everybody. So the reason that I think it's so important to lead with that is because this didn't just happen. My parents didn't just meet this man and put me in a car with him.
Hey guys, the world may be going down in flames, but it's not going to get me down. It's not going to depress me. Nope, absolutely not. It may be a complete disaster out there with all these Bidenomics and all the crazy stuff happening in our world, but it's not going to ruin my day. You know why? Because I started my day with a really good dark cup of coffee, and it was delicious. It is an America First cup of coffee from Blackout Coffee. Man, I'm so proud to partner with these guys. Their coffee is 100% American, 0% grift. Blackout Coffee is 100% committed to conservative values. They source the beans, the roasting process, the customer support and shipping. Everything they do embodies the true American spirit, the hardworking values, and they accept no compromise on taste or quality. I'm telling you something. When you see this cup sitting on this table, it is filled with Blackout Coffee. I love it so much, and maybe drinking too much of it, we'll see, but it's delicious. Listen, I want you to support small businesses across the country that have the same values you do, and Blackout Coffee is one of those companies. So I want you to check them out and see what you think. Listen, not only they're American First, they're family owned. So I want you to go to blackoutcoffee.com/Chad, and right now, if you use promo code CHAD, I spell it Chad, you're going to get 20% off your first order. That's blackoutcoffee.com/Chad. Use promo code Chad. One more time, blackoutcoffee.com/Chad. Use that promo code Chad.
I also really want to point out, and I want to touch on this and dig into it a little bit more later. Why didn't you just say something? There's a reason why. And that goes back to victim blaming and assuming that you know the situation when you don't.
Yeah. So you're saying, why didn't you say something?
People will say that. Why didn't you just say something? Why didn't you just tell your parents? Because I couldn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell my parents. When you are groomed and you have a predator, and that's what they are, they prey on their victims, they target them, they isolate them, then they make a move. It's a process. And they are so intentional. And think about this. I couldn't escape this man. I was at school with him every day. He called me out of class. I would say no when I could, but then I couldn't. And how am I supposed to say, it's to some degree. Then I was at soccer with him, and it was club soccer. So it wasn't like practice once a week. We were at practice 4 nights a week, and then we had to travel for soccer. He set it up to be that way, and grooming everybody. And so I couldn't say something. And then he knew where I lived. He befriended my parents. He would talk to them. He also worked overtime to befriend the other girls' parents. And that's part of the grooming process. So if and when it came out that he was sexually abusing me, what happens? All those other parents say, no, I know him. I would put my daughter in a car with him. I would let him be around my kids. So then my parents now feel crazy because, they felt the same way that we did. So we weren't in the wrong and he didn't do anything to their daughter. So how do we know that he did something to ours? That is what a predator looks like. That is what grooming looks like. And it's interesting in all the court papers, because he was convicted, and I think that's important to note. It says the extensive grooming was almost by far the worst part of my case.
Talk to me about grooming. I want to come back to that right there about it being the worst part of the case. But talk to me about grooming. Like, I got put on a list. I love being put on lists. There was a study, quote unquote study, that was done about the biggest hate-filled bigots. This is my word. On the internet, on Twitter, back when it was Twitter, and it was specifically about the anti-LGBTQ hate in the specific use of the word grooming. I think I was 7th or 8th on the list. Out of all influencers, I'd say that's pretty good. I wish I'd have been higher, but I was one who used the word groomer or grooming a lot, and so I made 8th on the list. I was pretty impressed with that status.
Interesting.
I never backed off of a single post, never apologized for a single damn one of them. I would post every single one of them again. I'm very proud of that. It's a badge of honor. But a lot of people, like you, they got, for a while, they would
hate speech.
They would throttle you for using the word groomer.
Well, think about it.
What's a groomer? I mean, what does that look like?
There's steps in it. They target the victim. Even with that, with the LGBTQ, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever I want to be club.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever I want to be club.
Alphabet soup.
I love that.
But seriously, though, they are targeting their victims. That's what they are. They are victims. And I don't like to call myself a victim. I'm a survivor. I survived what happened to me.
I love that.
But I am a victim of someone else's actions.
Yeah, you've been
and
victimized, that's for sure.
And so even within that category of things, they're targeting the victim. They're isolating them. They're slowly making a move. Like it's a process. Grooming is an extensive, intentional, conscious process.
Yeah.
And they're able to groom these kids into that, I think, for several reasons. That's a whole thing I'm pretty sure we could talk all day about. But we have really shitty parents. Let's just put it out there right now. We have a lot of shitty, selfish parents and who shove electronics in their kids' faces. Now, don't get me wrong. My kids have electronics. I'm not anti-electronics. I'm not even necessarily anti-social media. And I'm going to tell you why, because I believe once your kid is on one, they're exposed to all. There's people who say your kid shouldn't be on TikTok, but their kids are watching YouTube Short. What the fuck is the difference? There is no difference. The difference is
exact same content.
The difference is, what are you doing to monitor them?
Yeah.
And so what we see now is we see parents, and it's not, again, it's not all parents, using their children as clickbait and putting them in that spotlight. And when that happens, well, we'll talk about that part. When that happens, then your children are exposed to that. And if they're old enough to understand what's going on, then they seek attention from that. If we're talking about young teenage kids or even maybe a little bit older who aren't getting the attention that they need at home, where are they going to go? The internet, that's going to it's just literally validates everything that they're doing. Well, I believe that a huge push in this transgenderism and all that is bought. It all goes back to money, and they're using it to sway these kids, and then you go into the medical and big pharma and all that. Sure. But they're targeting them, then they're isolating them, then they're validating them, and then they get them to make the moves, and then they continue to validate them. Well, those dopamines hit, and then mom and dad are so fed up, they don't know what to do, so they just give in or they don't care. Maybe they even want that as well. They want the attention. Yeah. I believe if we didn't have social media, 90% of what people do, the choices they're making, they wouldn't be making. They're doing it because they want the social media validation.
Well, the transgender thing I've called for a couple of years now, transgender.
Yeah.
So you're right. We're lazy. We're a lazy society. After a while, we just want to break from the pressure of feeling, kids are bitching about something, this or that, and they want this, and you feel some sense of obligation to give the kids what the other kids have, and it's a bad way of parenting. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. And then and if you want to take the word grooming and change it with the word brainwashing. Think about everything that's going on in society, how we just they just chip away at your values and your boundaries, and then eventually it just becomes common and status quo.
Well, and so to tie back into grooming with the sexual predators, we have got to stop as society putting the responsibility of adult choices onto children.
Right.
I was 12 and 13. I had no choice, and he set it up to be that way. So when people say, why didn't you tell your parents? I couldn't have. I remember the day I tried to tell them, and I sat at the foot of their bed and I looked at them, and we had been at soccer all day. They were tired, And as a parent now and kids in sports, I understand 100% why my parents did certain things. And we'll go back to the incident at the apartment. And I remember trying to tell them, and all I could see was my 6'3" perpetrator standing between the two of us. He knew where I lived. He reminded me, I know where you live. Hey, I can call your sister out of class. So I was in fear that if I said anything, he knew everything about my life. He made sure of that. He made sure that I knew that as well. So I didn't stand a chance. I just didn't. And actually, when I turned him in, and we can talk about that too, I didn't realize I was turning him in because what he did was different. He loved me. He cared about me. So yes, there's guys that do this, but they're doing it to hurt the victims, and they're disgusting. That's not who I am. I remember him specifically saying 17 years isn't that big of a difference. And I remember thinking, what? Like, that's disgusting. Like, but he set it up to be.
Did you think that at that time?
Yes. Yes.
So you were disgusted by this. Did you, I mean, was in the grooming process, was he making you feel any form of emotion or affection towards him? Or was he just, is that what he was trying to accomplish?
Yes. But because he targeted me and preyed on me, he knew where to go. What I mean by that is I wanted to be the next Mia Hamm. That was my dream. I wanted to go to UNC Chapel Hill, and I wanted to be the next Mia Hamm.
Yeah, he's selling you dreams.
And I was really good at soccer, and I don't just say that. I was recruited in California for the West Coast Olympic Development Team. And guess who was standing right there when they offered it to me? Guess who looked at my parents and said, no, I see potential in her. I will be her sponsor coach. And so it's, again, when you're not in this, I'm sitting there thinking, well, if I tell on him, he's going to take this from me, and I don't want to lose this. And then he's going to take my parents' dream. And it's so complex. It's not just tell on him or.
Well, there's, God, let's just get into very strong language here. I mean, there's rape.
Yeah.
Which there's no emotion, there's no mental manipulation, there's no spiritual preying upon someone, there's no, psychological. It's just a physical act.
Yeah.
That's one thing. What this guy was doing obviously was pure manipulation.
Yes.
And the crazy thing is, I allude to Party Foul Steve sitting over there, and everybody watching the show knows who that is. He's silent over in the peanut gallery today. We know a guy. We've known him for a long time. He was a very big person in society, well-known person, and he did something with one of his daughter's friends. When we found out about this, our first response was, no, not this guy. Not this guy. There's no way. You guys are mistaken. There's no way that happened. Was there an element of that with this? I mean, this guy was kind of one of these upstanding. The thing that I see in this is here he's coaching girls, a lot of girls, a team of girls your age. There's no way this was isolated to just you.
No.
The fact that it happened to you, whether it was isolated or not, is horrible.
Yeah. This didn't just happen. This is still happening. And someone like this, who is a predator, who is a charming narcissist, it's funny because you said like demonic and blaming and things. He blames a soccer ball. He wrote an article and had it published. He blames an air-filled orb for why he pursued a child. Yeah. And had it published. And so to give you
So he was did he use that article to justify his actions, or was it an excuse?
Well, he says in there that he's the stealer of children's innocence. So plural. There's no singular anything in there. So that's concerning to me. But he got really involved in one of the biggest mega churches in Arizona. But he started at the top. Like they know what they're doing. And he weaseled his way in to where the church knew. I exposed them on social media too. They knew he was a convicted pedophile. They knew he was. And the senior pastor of the church, one of the board members, and the founder of the children's sports organization allowed him to circumvent every safety protocol in place and be on the field with soccer, or on the soccer field with girls. They allowed him. They allowed him to attend father-daughter dances. They allowed him to host a neighborhood group. So people like this know. And then I sit with them because I demanded a meeting, and I say, you understand, like, you're aware of what he did. well, we know him. He wouldn't do these things. And I give them the charges and they tell me this as a victim to my face. And
so this has happened to you. You've got what, years have passed after all of these charges, and
15 years.
And now this church is going to just open their doors and give him access to.
They did, yeah. And I was, it's huge. I mean, this church is ginormous. It has 15 campuses all over the state of CCV, and they allowed it. And I tried to tell them. Nobody knows a perpetrator better than the victim. They groom them, they train them. Yeah. And I knew he was around children. And so I approached them and I had proof, and they know I have proof. And people thought I was making it up. If I was making it up, they would have already sued me. They can't, because everything I said is in fact true.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Whenever you make those accusations and they're like, that's not true, but yet they don't ever pursue any legal recourse of action.
They can't. They can't. But don't worry, they sent my picture out to security that I am a threat. And if I'm on campus, I'm to be treated as a DLR. It doesn't look right. But not the pedophile who was convicted. And then, yeah.
That's mind-blowing to me.
But my point in bringing that up is these people know how to circumvent. They know how to manipulate. They target the right people.
Manipulators know how to manipulate.
Yes. And to help people understand, he went to one of the lower pastor's wives who he went to church with. Or I'm sorry, who he went to high school with at the church. It was like, hey, remember me? Befriended them, then eventually told them something. And so this is very recent. This is in the last 2 years that this piece happened. But he literally is doing the same exact thing, just at a church this time.
Churches frustrate me. And that's one of the things, like I don't care who you are. I mean, the wood chipper, right? I've made many videos. I've even used humorous examples to make videos to talk about wood chippers. I was at a convention one time and they had a wood chipper there at the convention, and I was walking around in this, industrial convention, and I saw the wood chipper. I made a whole video about pedophiles.
Yeah.
It's so, it was a humorous way to make a point. And we talk about that. And when I put stuff out there, you always have the crazy trolls that say, well, what about, and they'll post a thing, so-and-so got arrested because they were associated with a church or whatever. And I'm like, oh no, they certainly need to go to the front of the line because they certainly know better.
Yeah.
Anybody that does that from a faith-based perspective, that I'm going to come into a place which really should be a safe haven, I mean, you should go to the front of the line. And churches should have those safety protocols, and there are plenty of those examples that are out there. Yeah. The issue that I have in all of this is that you mentioned parenting being lazy, is that everybody from administrative people who are in leadership over a club soccer league to administrative people who are over a church, especially a large one like that. So why is everybody so damn lazy? And just say, hey, listen, if there's even an accusation, we need to really take pause here.
Yeah.
But they just let it go.
Well, I think that's twofold. So I think the first part of it is, because I've thought a lot about this. Why do people rush to the bad guy? Why do churches feel the need to coddle them? Why do sex offenders, perpetrators have so many resources, endless resources at their fingertips? Why is it that they can have these the treatment? And I understand they need treatment, but it's mandatory and it's provided for them. But victims are left hung out to dry. I never had therapy when I was younger, ever. I was never even offered to me. And my prosecutor sucked so bad, she didn't even seek restitution. She's also running for Maricopa County attorney, and let's vote her out.
Maricopa County attorney.
Yeah, she is not for the victim. So I've thought a lot about that. Why is it that there seems to be more support and people there for the perpetrator? And I think with the church specifically, it's because they appear, and I'm not saying that they aren't, but they appear to be in the midst of their struggle, as they should be, whether they, just got out of jail or prison or whatever. Their life is inconvenienced, as it should be. But because they appear to be struggling and now they've been caught and they are facing hopefully some sort of repercussion for their actions, they go to church where it's, oh, we forgive you. You made a mistake. No, you made a fucking choice, but we don't call it mistakes. And so the church feels like they're able to help them And they're not just saying they're helping them, they're physically seeing how they're helping them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I've always said that it's interesting. You have these guys that, they get married when they're 18. They have these, they have their kids. They are faithful to their wife, and they have this, strong nuclear family with a lot of values. And these guys have a great testimony of, some really powerful testimony of faithfulness and fidelity and all of these things. Nobody wants to hear that story. They want to hear the story from the guy who murdered somebody, went to jail, got out, found Jesus. And now he's packing the Colosseums because look at the redeeming power of what God can do. And I think that what you have, a lot of churches fall into that trap of saying, okay, we're gonna show people how people can be redeemed.
Yes.
And that is, you got to be. Listen, I'm all for redemption. I really am. I'm all for that. But there's a difference between redemption before God and redemption before people.
That's it. That's it. Our job on earth is not to decide how these people will end. That is God. They have to stand before God one day.
Yeah.
And we as churches, as society, have forgotten we can be accepting while still having boundaries and holding people accountable for their actions.
I mean, what I want to do to somebody like that is say, okay, so glad you found Jesus because you're going to meet him tomorrow. We're gonna send you up there, and you're gonna,
But let me ask you this, and I kind of got into this on a podcast with someone else. It is not my business, nothing, if he has found Jesus or what have you.
Right.
But as someone who's really been restored and redeemed and found Jesus, are they continuing to lie and manipulate to be in that position, or are they being exactly? Are they being honest? Hey, I am a convicted sex offender.
There is no position for you.
I wish that I could be here and serve. And you know what? Let the sex offenders go to church. I'm not opposed to that, but you don't allow them to be around children.
You don't allow them around, because like here's my thing is, okay, so if a person can be biblically, and we won't get too deep in this stuff, but the New Testament has some pretty specific requirements for people who are in ministry. So if that person can be disqualified from doing ministry because of certain things in their life and lifestyle, well then certainly somebody like that has to be withheld and restrained from having access to certain people. I mean, if I've got a pit bull, that likes to eat chickens, and I say this pit bull has been reformed. He doesn't have a taste for chicken anymore. He loves celery and carrots. He hasn't eaten a chicken in 15 years. He's on his deathbed. He's old. He can't even chase chickens anymore. I'm not going to let him take naps in the coop.
Yeah. I like to come back to this one. This, to your point, is, can you therapy the gay out of somebody?
That's a great point.
Can you therapy the gay out of somebody?
That's hate speech, Kayleigh. Come on.
You can't. Can you therapy a sexual preference for a child out of somebody? No. The answer is no. There's not enough therapy in the world. It doesn't just go away.
Yeah.
Can you therapy a male being attracted sexually to a female? No, you can't therapy it out of them. You can't.
You cannot. I want to say publicly, you cannot therapy my heterosexual desires. You just can't.
But seriously,
not even open to it.
And when we sat with the church and we had the conversation with them, 4 hours, because they just could not see what how wrong they were. And we finally said, if you have someone who is a recovering alcoholic, would you say, we're going to go to meet at the bar and have drinks? No, you wouldn't put them in that environment, in that situation.
Amazing.
But you allowed someone who you knew was a convicted sex offender, who was a soccer coach with a player, and you allowed him on the soccer field. It was so wrong. And, it's just like that kind of stuff. But that all... those guys are everywhere. They are everywhere. We need to start teaching our children and our society to look for the charming narcissist. And also, I think something that's important to point out, and we'll just stick with the church theme because we're on it. A true predator is not going to go volunteer and teach in middle school. That's too easy. They're going to volunteer and be a greeter at the church. Do you know why? Because they can scope out more of what's going on. Mm-hmm. They can interact with adults more. And then they see, oh, that mom appears to be a single mom and she's got 2 daughters. See her every weekend. Starts with a hello, slowly. Meanwhile, he's just treating everyone else the same in public. Then it comes out 3 years later that this greeter at the church was sexually abusing that woman's daughter. And what does everybody say? Yeah. He would never do that. I talked to him he was the nicest man. He always said hello to my daughter. And that's what happened when I turned my abuser in. Everybody stood by his side. Everybody.
Yeah, I've seen that happen firsthand.
Yes.
I've seen that happen.
And we went to a club soccer tournament the weekend because my parents allowed me to stay in soccer. It's all I wanted to do. And obviously he wasn't there. We went to a club soccer tournament in Tucson, which is a couple hours away from where I live. Mm-hmm. And we pulled up and the entire club was wearing white T-shirts with Sharpie on them that said, "We support our coach."
You know, and the frustrating thing about all of this stuff, I'm looking at the clock here, because there's so much I want to talk to you about, and we may turn this into 2 episodes. We'll see. We can do whatever we want to do. Cheers, take a sip. Yeah,
we should.
We got a lot.
We haven't even gotten to the policy.
Because you're doing a lot. Well, I want you to save that, because we're going to talk about all the different things that you're doing, and I don't want to spoil anything, because you are doing a lot, which is how you even, and I'll give a little spoiler here. We'll talk about it much more later, because I want to go back into your story. Because I want our audience fully pissed off. You even called me out on something like that. You sent me a message on something that I had posted, and you're like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, I get it, but this is kind of the way I'm going with it. We talked. That's kind of one of the ways we got to know each other, which is a bold stance, a bold move, and I appreciate that about you. I really do. And,
no disrespect either.
No, what you said to me was completely valid, and we'll talk about that in a little while. Maybe on the next episode, we'll see. You flew in from Arizona. We'll talk about it on the next episode. We're gonna talk about so many different things. Again, we're laid back, and you're awesome. Thank you for coming. By the way,
thanks for having me.
Talking about the standing by somebody in a deal like that. I think a lot of it is sort of just people. Correct me on this if I'm wrong. I think they don't want to feel like they got duped.
100%. I think that is a big part of it.
There's no way someone could deceive us that badly.
No one wants to feel like a fool. No one ever wants to be made out to be a fool. No one. Think about, not that I made you feel like you were a fool, but when I sent you to go back to that message, no one wants to feel like, oh, did I have the wrong information? Did I fuck up? No one wants to feel that's not a good feeling.
Exactly.
And what's crazy is then pride gets in the way in my situation, and all these people are still standing by him. So I think what's important, and if we can go back to how I turned him in and I didn't realize it.
Let's hang on a second on that. So let's clarify something.
Okay.
Because I think there's people out there, there's parents, if not, there's grandparents. And I think grandparents, do you have grandparents?
Yes.
Were they actively involved with?
Yeah.
The reason I bring that up is because I talk to a lot of people at live shows and stuff, and we have some folks that come out there. I make jokes about being a grandparent. I'm not one, but I make jokes about that demographic because I always tell them, I was like, you need to, start whooping your grandkids' ass when they act up because your kids aren't doing it. All they've ever done is introduce them to Amazon.com and PlayStation, right? You need to teach them the song of our people, which is the sound of a leather belt turning loose from denim loops. I mean, whoop that ass a little bit. And they get a big laugh out of it. But, grandparents tend to be, they're younger these days. I will say that. This wasn't coffee. I think y'all have figured that out by the rattle of the ice.
I thought that's what we were drinking.
No. I brought it back
This is really good coffee. I was going to ask what kind it was.
This is my COVID protocol. Nothing sticks to my insides, that's for sure. And that's tequila driven. Thank you. Grandparents are younger these days. Feels that way anyway. I think that's probably because I'm older.
No, you're not.
But I'm older. Dogs are barking. They're excited too. But I said, these grandparents need to be aware of what their grandkids are getting exposed to as well. Because a lot of times I think a parent can be so close to a situation that they don't even realize that they've made themselves or their children very vulnerable.
Yeah.
So I want them to be wise to this, because what your mother did because you're moving across the country, North Carolina to Arizona, your mother makes a call. She wants something for you to be excited about. It's hard for a 12-year-old, 13-year-old to move across the country. You're away from your friends. Now you're starting a whole new life.
Yep.
They wanted you something to give you something to look forward to. And by doing so, she inadvertently gave away some information. Now, the thing about these people who are master manipulators is these are smart people. in that they're very intuitive. Now, I'm not saying book smart or whatever. They may or may not be, but these types of predators tend to be very intuitive. They can read people. They know how to collect information. It's encyclopedic. They're collecting it because they're looking for an access point.
Absolutely.
They're wanting to find a way how they can get to the prey, the predator to the prey. And I talked about Jeffrey Epstein. His situation, what he did was very different, but still it's same but different. He was a master manipulator. He was not a book smart guy. The guy was a middle school math teacher, substitute math teacher, but he knew how to play people, and he knew how to broker power from people, and one thing led to another, and that's what happened. Ultimately, he's a billionaire. He can do whatever he wants to do by his private island. He can rape all the children he wants to do. People still don't know who's on the client list. It's disgusting.
We'll never know.
We'll never know.
Never.
Because
we will never know.
The DOJ and the government will never tell you because the DOJ and the government are on the list. Mm-hmm. So they're not going to do that. There's too many people in high places of power that have been blackmailed and extorted, and they'll never know. Same with Sean Combs. Same with Diddy. Whatever. It's a deep. I mean, the things that are being exposed about Hollywood, the pedophilia that's out there, that still, even though it's exposed, we're still not just tearing that entire shithole down.
Yeah,
is amazing to me. Nothing infuriates me more than this reality that we have under our noses that people are keeping under the rug. But this guy, he finds you, and I'm just trying to get the story right. He gets you into a place of, where were you? Were you like on a, when he first started to physically come on to you, assault you? Were you on the road doing soccer? Were you at home? Was he at your home? Were you at his home? Were you in an office? I mean, how did this play out? How did he get you cornered?
Yeah,
for lack of better terms.
So, again, it was very slow. So it didn't. People think, oh, they just do. No, it was very, very slow.
Yeah.
So, for example, he was my PE teacher, and so there was a couple other girls that played softball in the same soccer club, and so we would run the mile at school, and he would make us, the four of us, run an extra mile. So that wasn't not like make us, but he'd be like, hey, let's get it in, let's get one more mile in, whatever, things like that. Again, where he was doing it where it wasn't just me, it was like, no, it's all the girls that are playing on this soccer club. And I look back now and it's terrifying to me, like how much thought he had to have put into these things as I look back. And so I think there was a corner of the building, right, was the office. And so there was the equipment door on one side and there was the office door on the other side. And we would all the kids would put equipment away. And
so it's sort of like a field house type equipment
So
room.
we were allowed in the equipment room, but we weren't necessarily allowed in the office.
Okay.
So again, it would be very slow. It would be, we were putting stuff away and he'd leave the door open. He'd say, hey, come in here. And he'd be like, is school going okay? Are you having a good day? Like very, very slow to where I was 12 and I didn't think anything of it.
And I don't know. Let's put it in perspective. 12 years old, 6th grade, right?
Go find a fucking 12-year-old and look at how young that is.
It's very naive.
Yes.
It's very innocent.
And I really thought that he just cared about me because I was new. I didn't know anybody, and with soccer, and that's all he ever talked to me about was soccer.
And here is a father figure, a coach. I mean, whether it's a mentor, a pastor, a coach. I played baseball. I have very specific memories of really great coaches that influenced my life. They'll always be a part of my life. From all the way up, all the levels. You trust these people. Yeah. These are authority figures in your life.
And all I had been taught was, because people say, didn't your parents tell you if anybody touched you to tell them? Yeah, my parents told me that. They didn't teach me. You don't teach your kids to look for these people that are in a position of trust.
Yeah, they're not in a windowless white van with free candy painted on the side.
But that's what I was taught. Stay away from that scary person. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen, because it does, but it's rare. It's so much more rare than teachers and groomers who target children and come after them. It's so much more rare. And so then it was very slow. And then it started with I don't know, a slap on the butt, or, you know, like maybe he made it off to be unintentional at first, or that's how it just very, very slow.
Inadvertent brush across the whatever. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Until I wasn't responsive, and then he decided that he would cross that line and was forceful. And there was a very distinct moment when that happened. And that was in the office of the, or not in the office, in the equipment room. And so I would stay out of there, but then he would try to lure me back in there. And again, very strategic. He would call in all the soccer girls, but then he would keep me around after, and I would try to leave. I was 12 years old. He would stand in front of the door. Those kinds of things. So to my post from earlier about me being at his apartment, as a parent, how does that happen? How do you end up at your perpetrator's apartment? Well, as a parent, it's hard when people don't understand, like locations and things. Yeah. But where I lived in Arizona at the time was in Buckeye, and that's where I went to school. And we had a soccer tournament in Tempe, which is about an hour away.
Right.
My dad worked in Scottsdale, which is an hour away from Buckeye, and my mom worked in Phoenix.
Yeah.
So as a parent, I can see how my mom thought, and my parents thought, we befriended this man. He is a coworker of mine. We trust him.
Yeah.
And instead of us having to go back and forth, and by the way, I have younger siblings, and everything really did revolve around me because I was so into soccer. That's what our life revolved around. We'll just have him bring her to the game because it was, right after school. And I remember thinking, I have to tell my parents I can't get in the car with him. I have to. But then they would have said, why?
So you already had, because of the advances.
Oh, things had already happened. Yeah.
You already knew.
I already knew.
This guy's a creep.
I already knew. And I just kept telling myself, because I've had to really work through that in therapy, why didn't I just tell my parents? And so trying to heal from being an adult and looking at this from my 30-year-old self versus sitting in my 12-year-old self and trying to understand why I didn't say anything. I couldn't. And yes, you could have just said, no, I couldn't. I couldn't say anything.
Yeah.
And I knew it would inconvenience my parents. I knew they would be upset. I knew they would be frustrated if I said I'm not comfortable. And they would have said, why aren't you comfortable? We know him. He's great. I've said that with my kids before.
You're just being a girl.
Yeah.
You're just being a kid.
I mean, and so I thought, well, it won't be that bad. We'll go from school to the soccer field. And I could not have been more wrong, because it turned into, he called my mom, and this is how predators work. He called my mom and he said, hey, we may be a few minutes late for warm up. I accidentally left my coaching bag at home. And I knew as soon as he did that, I was fucked. And it was around Valentine's Day, and I have a reason that I know that. And so we stopped, and I said, I'll stay in the car. And he said no. And then we went inside, and I just sat on the couch. He took a shower. He came out in a towel. He asked me what I wanted to wear. He was in the bedroom asking me to come in. I was, like I said in that post, no. I didn't respond. I was trying to figure out how to leave. I didn't know where I was. People, how do you not know where you were? I was somewhere in Phoenix. I didn't know. I'd never been there before. Again, I'm 12 years old.
And also to your point about, the location aspect of it, Phoenix is a large metropolitan area.
Yes.
There's a lot of cities that make up Phoenix, for lack of better terms. Like you said, Tempe, you got Scottsdale, you've got, all these different places. It's a big metropolitan area.
Yeah.
And you're 12.
Yeah. And I hadn't lived there that long. So I didn't know. If I took my daughter right now to somewhere in Phoenix, she wouldn't know where she was. She'd know maybe we're in Phoenix. Yeah. I didn't have a phone.
When I go do a live show in Mesa, we say we're in Phoenix.
Yeah. I mean, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up there. And then there was candy hearts on the table. And he said, whatever these say, you have to do. Well, ended up being something stupid.
Wow.
And I didn't respond. And then can we leave? Can we leave? And he said, yes. And then I tried to open the door and he slammed it shut. And then it was over for me. And he had me pinned up against the door, and I was just like banging and kicking as much as I could. And it was enough for him to stop. And then I had to get back in the car with this man and go to the game. And I remember getting there, and all I was looking for was my dad, because my mom couldn't come. And seeing my dad pull up and get out of the car in his work clothes, all I wanted to do was run to my dad. But I couldn't, because I couldn't. I didn't have a choice. But I felt so safe that he was there. And, you know, there's those things where my parents, they had no idea. And they couldn't have known. I needed them to save me, but they didn't know that I needed to be saved. And that's the reality that so many victims are in.
I mean, I'm speechless we hear these stories. We read about these stories, or you know, you follow somebody, you know, Craig Sawyer, Sawman, or Jacob Williams, you know, these guys who actively talk about trafficking, and they talk about sexual abuse with children. And you read these stories. You know, there was recently a documentary out about the director or producer with the Nickelodeon show. But when you put an actual face and a personality and a human being with that, it's the fact that we allow this injustice to exist in our society. I've said forever that men, the biggest problem with men, and I'll debate anybody on this, is that men, Western society, Western civilization, we're one of the only cultures, if not the only culture in the world that doesn't have a ceremony or a process whereby we call our boys into manhood. You know, there's bar mitzvahs for the Jewish boys. There's vision quests for Native American boys. Oh, I could list these things off. There's no, and so consequently, we've not, as men, taught boys how to be men. We've not raised a generation of men. So we've raised a generation of people who don't know how to get out of their adolescence. And consequently, they don't know how to get out of their adolescent desires. And these things can get perverted. And we sit back and we look at these things and we go, let's condemn all these people for doing what they did, and they should be condemned. But then we don't look at ourselves as members of society and say, we're allowing this shit to happen. Yeah. Yeah. We're allowing this shit to happen. When these people should be erased from the face of the earth. This is not something we want perpetuated into the future, and yet we allow it, and people get away with it.
And we have no consequences. There's no real consequences. There's none. Mm.
Not realistically.
No.
You know, some guy who does something like that and spends, I don't know, did he do jail time eventually? And I want to come back to how you turned him in, but he did some jail time. It wasn't enough, I can tell you that.
No, he was facing 25 years in prison. He went to jail for 6 months.
See,
he asked for 2 terms of lifetime probation, and we will get into that. And lifetime does not mean lifetime. And so my parents they felt forced into a plea deal. And now, mind you, what's so important about my case was that we did a confrontation call after I turned him in, and he admitted to everything. So we had all the proof we needed. We have him on audio recording admitting to everything. Not only did he admit to everything, he had a caveat out of everything. Well, tell your parents it was this person, which it had been 1.5 years since anything had happened because I switched schools and soccer teams. So he no longer had access to me. So him coming around would have raised red flags. I wasn't accessible anymore. That's the only reason the abuse stopped. He was facing 25 years in prison, and he did 6 months in jail and 2 terms of lifetime probation. And in the last 4 years, which is how I call it my 13-year gap, he has petitioned to have the terms of his so-called lifetime probation lifted 3 times. He doesn't like the answers they're giving him, so now he's taking this case to the Court of Appeals. And it has been 15 years since my case was closed and he was convicted, and I am still living in this hell because he has more rights than I do.
I'm going to be rude. You're a lady. How old are you?
Oh, 32.
32. You're never supposed to ask a lady how old they are. So this is 20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I say 15 years since I turned him in.
No, I got that. But yeah, I'm just saying from the time when this hell started, this stuff started. you are a young lady. You are a mother of a lot of children. I say that because I'm a father of a lot of children. You have a husband. You guys have been together for a number of years. I say all this to say this is not something as a young lady that you should still be dealing with.
It's awful.
You should have never dealt with it in the first place, to be clear, obviously. But you're too young. You're too young with too much life and too much life ahead of you, and this is
reality. This is reality.
It is reality. And I guarantee you there are people who are listening to this or they're watching this and they're going, that was me. And I never said anything. Or I didn't do anything. I'm not talking about the guy you liked that you had some kind of consensual relationship with that, you eventually got pissed off at him because it didn't go anywhere. I'm not talking about the crazy relationship shit. This is legitimate victimization. This is what's happening. This is a child. Yeah. You were a child. You felt, and again, I'm gonna venture out to where the limits of human communication vocabulary are probably going to stop me, but you alluded earlier to where you say, I don't want to say anything, or I couldn't, I was silenced because of one, there was threats, but also there's the fear of exposure. There's embarrassment, there's shame. Yeah. If I'm assuming, like, this shouldn't have happened to me, and I don't want anybody to know that it happened to me. I don't want anybody to know that my coach shut the door, locked the door, and I had to kick my way out of this, you know? So you keep it all in. Shame is a powerful thing that keeps us from being free a lot of times. And I'm not saying that you felt that per se. You haven't said that, but I
did.
I would assume you did.
Yeah, I did.
And I know there's a lot of people who listen to this who feel that same thing. And they don't want to come forward because of it.
And I don't blame them. People talk about how awful the abuse in itself is, and it is.
Yeah.
No one talks about the hell that comes after you turn your abuser in. You are treated horribly by the judicial, even if they believe you.
I want to talk about that. I'm glad you said that because I know you catch a lot of shit.
Oh, yes.
Kayleigh, the fact that you made an Instagram post today where you said, listen, I'm going to tell this. It's hard for me to tell it. The fact that, the fact that you had to put that out there and talk about with very vulnerable terms, I'm going to tell this. It's hard for me to talk about this publicly. And then you put in quotation marks, I know there are people who are going to tell me.
Yeah.
Fuck you. Are those people who want to tell you what you should have done as a 12, 13-year-old, 14-year-old child? I'm sorry. The nature that's inside of me just wants to say, fuck you.
No, I do too.
Seriously.
Especially with people who attack my parents.
Yeah.
I am sure there if you could sit here and say, oh no, I would have put my girls in the car with that coach, no doubt. My parents didn't know. They didn't know.
Yeah.
I would say, I'm very different because of what I've been through. But I will say, as a parent, like I said, if the situation my parents were in, I probably would have been like, oh my gosh, she'll take my kid. Thank you for saving me 16 hours in the car, because not everybody is bad. And they believed and trusted.
99% aren't.
And look at what people even do that with family members. They don't know. My parents didn't know, but people are so quick. And they're assholes. I would never put my kid, first of all, fuck you. If you don't have kids, you have nothing. You literally get out of here. Second of all, have you had kids that are in sports, like club sports like that? If not, then again, you just don't know. My parents did not do anything wrong.
No.
They did everything right. My parents did everything right. There's not one thing they did wrong.
And I know from watching not only my own life, but others, you get to know certain people in leagues. Again, I played baseball all the way up, and you get to know people. There's these days. I told you earlier when you came in, you were talking about all the stuff your kids have going on. I was like, listen, I'm glad my kids are older. These kids these days, they're in cheer, they're in tumbling, they're in soccer, they're in basketball, they're in Oh my God, they're playing the clarinet, and the trombone, and baseball, and all these different things. I mean, you want to harken back to a day when there was a community where you could kind of rely on each other, and you could trust the pastor, and you could trust the coach, and you could trust the Boy Scout leader, and you could, know.
And remember, he was my mom's coworker, so it wasn't like it was just a parent-coach relationship. It was 2 years of building this relationship with this person. And my mom had befriended him. And so my parents struggled on very different levels after I turned him in, because my mom felt a sort of betrayal by her friend, which, as I can understand, when you know somebody who, like, there's no way that happened, but it did happen. And when I turned him in and I told my parents, and my mom, it was, again, we can get into that. She said he would never, and they grabbed the phone so quick because it was on speakerphone, because here I'm telling my mom, and I don't blame her for not believing me.
Go back. Tell me this again.
When I turned him in?
I want to make sure that I'm understanding what you're saying here. I want to make sure that everybody is understanding what you're saying. Okay. Walk me through this process.
Turning him in?
Turning him in.
Okay. So the school I was at, and Buckeye was very small at the time. It's not small anymore.
Right.
I wish it was. And so very, very small. I went to school where I went 6th and 7th grade, and then rezoning, I went to a different school in 8th grade. What's interesting about that, and I was just telling somebody this the other day, I spent my entire 8th grade year just sitting on a wall reading. I didn't know how to be 13. I didn't know how to be an 8th grader because I was in fight or flight and literal survival mode. I didn't know how to fit in with the other kids. And I was very isolated. And someone said, "Didn't your mom think that was weird?" And I said, "No, I don't think so." I just sat on the wall and read, because my mom worked at that school too.
Every 13-year-old kid I know is weird in their own way.
So I just would go to school, and then I would go to soccer, and that was what I did.
Yeah.
And so my dad has always told me I can do and be whatever I want to be. And so he saw a lot of potential in me. And so they sent me to Xavier College Preparatory, the most prominent private all-girls college prep school in Arizona. Mm-hmm. And so it was September 11th, actually, and my freshman year. And I didn't know anybody there. There was a couple girls from the club, because the club, people are from all around that went to that school. And we were watching a video, and it sounds ridiculous, but it wasn't. It was called Good Touch, Bad Touch. And I remember going in this dark room and sitting there like this, like falling asleep. Like, I didn't want to be in there. I thought it was like a sex ed class. And everything they said happened to me. It was essentially about grooming. Grooming wasn't a term then.
I wonder if they still show that stuff now.
I have requested that video.
Really?
Yeah. It was old when we watched it, so I can't imagine, now. But I would like to watch it.
The older stuff was the better stuff.
Yes, it was more real. And so I remember
Jimmy didn't know that his teacher, I'm telling you, I've seen some of these clips. Like, some of them were very vivid.
And that's probably something like, it was something along those lines. And I remember thinking, oh my God, the one thing they said that really stuck out to me was, it doesn't have to be a stranger. It can be somebody you know.
Yeah. And
so I went up to one of the little nuns and I said, I need to talk to somebody. And she said, okay. She didn't even ask a question. And I didn't know what was going on. So they took me to the counselor guidance counselor area. And I sat down and I was looking around, and they had the shelves with all the colleges. And I remember skimming thinking, oh, UNC Chapel Hill is probably down there. And this woman came and she said, Kayleigh. And I looked at her and she said, can I sit with you? And I said, yeah. And she said, are you ready to talk? And I said, no, I don't want to. And she said, that's fine. And I just sat there and thought about how, did he mean to hurt me? He said he was going to help me. I just want to go to UNC Chapel Hill. I just want to be the next Mia Hamm. I want to be in the Olympics. And if I tell, what's he going to do? And I finally said, let's go talk. And so I sat there and I just told her, and she said, do you know what a mandated reporter is? And I said, yeah, but there's nothing to report because this was different. Like, he wasn't trying to hurt me. And she said, no, I have to call the police. And I said, please don't. And she said, I have to call your mom. And I begged her not to. And I remember hearing my mom's voice and knowing as soon as she said hello, our lives would never be the same. And she told my mom, and my mom said, who was it? And I told her, and she said he wouldn't do that. And they grabbed it. And everything after that was kind of a blur. So.
What did it take? Your mother's initial response is one that so many people give. I've done that with people. I alluded to that earlier. You say that, no, that person would never do that. That was her initial response. How long did it take for her to reach a realization?
Not very long, because the next day we went to the police station right after.
And let me stop you. I'm sorry. And this was what, a year or two after?
So
the event.
So the last time I saw, I don't remember when the last even roughly time frame of anything physical happening. I couldn't give you a date. It had to have been.
Were there multiple times?
Oh yeah.
There were multiple times. So, but more than just locking the door that time.
Yes,
He at that stage in the game. I want to venture into his psyche for a minute, and I'm probably way off on this, but sometimes I wonder if guys like that think, all right, I've gone this far, I'm guilty, I might as well go get what I want.
I would imagine.
You know what I'm saying? It's just like you just kind of become animalistic in regards to that. And I'm not saying that's it, and that's certainly not an excuse, but I think these guys just like.
Well, and I think too, there's a lot that goes into it. So he got married November 2005. And then I turned him in September 2006.
So, oh my gosh, Kayleigh.
And he was having multiple affairs with multiple moms. I
want to slap somebody. Listen. So is he engaged when this was going on with you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You want to know something really crazy?
Yeah, that's why we're here.
His ex-wife lives half a mile from me right now. Isn't that crazy?
So the one he married is now his ex-wife.
Yeah. And she didn't believe it either when it happened.
Of course she didn't.
I think it was, you ask him, it was the soccer ball. He blamed the airfield orb.
Which I'd love to read this. I don't know that I want to read this, but.
I don't think you do. But I think that, so the last physical incident that had to have happened was my 7th grade year, which would have been 2004. 8th grade would have been 2005. Now, the last time I saw him before I turned him in was April 2006, because I was at a soccer tournament and I had kind of seen him around because he was the 90 coach and I got moved to the 93 team. And I played on both, but I stayed with the 93 team. And I was walking up a hill, so I couldn't have seen him. And he saw me and he walked right up to me. And he asked how I was doing, and I froze. And I just stared at him. And I said, I hate you for what you did to me.
You said that to him?
Uh-huh. And for the first time ever, I saw fear in his eyes. And he said, if you ever tell anybody what I did to you, I will hurt you.
That's wow.
So that would have been almost a year after anything had happened.
Well, that's why I brought that up in the way that I did, because I'm thinking at this stage in the game, he's thinking he got away with it.
Yeah.
You think that's true? I don't know enough that went on with the details.
I don't, yes and no. But what's interesting to me is, again, looking back as an adult, so that was in April. And then I hadn't spoken, nothing. It was like literally cut off because he did not have the opportunity. And if he would have tried, it would have been too obvious. It was gone. There was no more, there was no window of opportunity. And so I think that, so we did a confrontation call and they said, can you come up with a story? And again, I always feel the need to almost have a disclaimer or explain, because to help people understand. And this is why my book is so important. Yeah. When I did the confrontation call, they have to admit 3 ways in 3 different times, or they have to admit 3 different times in 3 different ways. You have to use very specific language for a one-party consent, because you don't want it to be turned against you. So, for example, when I had to come up with a story, they wanted me to stay as true as possible. And I'm so proud of the 14-year-old me who made that phone call. I'm so proud because I don't know how I did it. And the story was, hey, and he knew my mom. Like everyone has to, they were friends. Hey, me and my sister were switching rooms. My mom found my diary. I wrote about things that we did. So I had to say that we did because why? I couldn't alert him. Whose number are you calling from? Oh, my mom's realtor number. Oh, okay. And he's like, well, you can't say that happened. And then they were writing on this yellow pad notebook, and they would write like you and they'd circle it because I had to switch from we to you to trap him. So we'll remember when you, and then it went from we to you, and he admitted to everything. And not only did he admit, he had a caveat for well, don't say it was me. He remembered names. Say it was this person. He tried to blame one of the older, he was trying to put blame on one of the older boys on like a team that was like 2 years older than me.
So he's now trying to.
Yeah. And how did he remember that? So when you ask, it had been 1.5 years since anything happened. But for him to be so forthcoming and so open was interesting. It was too easy. And he admitted to everything. He didn't even skip a beat. So then the next day he got transferred to a different school, and they went and they arrested him, like on the spot. They took him down for questioning. He, of course, denied everything and blamed it all on me. And no, these things never happened, even though they already had the confrontation call of him admitting to everything. And then he lawyered up, and the rest of that is history for that piece. He was in jail until November when the founder of the soccer club, the president and the founder, bailed him out.
Stop.
Yeah.
All right, let's stop. Let's stop. Okay, there's so much more that we need to get into. There's a lot more that we need to talk about because this story goes on, and it really goes on. There's so much that's there, but let's take a pause.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna end this episode. We're gonna call this part 1.
And we're gonna go get some coffee.
Yeah, some coffee.
We're gonna go get some coffee.
You brought me some stuff. Mark 9:42. If you don't know what Mark 9:42, it talks about those that harm these little ones, that they need a millstone hung around their neck and they need to be cast into the sea. Words of Jesus. And then you've got something that I'm absolutely in love with, and I can't wait to put it on today. Team wood chipper.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
That's the only solution.
I'm legitimately disappointed that I didn't come up with this idea for my own merchandise line, Team Wood Chipper. This is amazing. Where can people get this?
So that you can get on 1412clothingco.com.
So the numbers, 14?
1412clothingco.com. Or my organization, which is becauseyoustillmatter.com. There's a direct link because all my merch directly funds my mission to fight for victims and survivors because you still matter.
So obviously on that website, becauseyoustillmatter.com.
Yep.
People have a way to contact your organization.
Yes.
If they are in a situation anywhere remotely describing what we're talking about, that you can point them in a direction.
Yes, I can point them in a direction. I cannot legally help them.
Exactly.
But I can point them in a direction.
Let's call it a ministry.
Yeah.
Let's call it a ministry. Yeah. You can point them in a direction.
Yes.
And I would encourage those of you to do that. There's a lot of resources out there. And I think these days a lot of people don't know who to trust.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times the resources are nefarious themselves.
It's hard, yeah.
Yeah. We have more to talk about.
I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface.
We really haven't. But I want to value your time, and I want to make sure that we get it all out there because thank you for your vulnerability, your willingness to talk about this, because anybody that watches this or listens, they hear or they see the emotion that's there. You're a grown woman. You're a young woman, but you're a grown woman that, your prefrontal cortex is fully developed. You know you got a good mind. You got 5 children and a husband, and for those emotions to still remain where they are is because you were forced to be vulnerable. in a lot of ways. And you're not allowed yet, and I don't know that you ever will be, honestly, to just let all that go. Especially when you consider the mantle and the mission that you've taken on your shoulders, and it's a heavy one.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about that in the next episode. Yeah, okay, we're putting all the stuff up here, all the websites, everything. They're going to put it down there. I'm going to say, because there are going to be some of you pinheads that don't come back for the next episode, let me just tell you, this girl is a warrior. She's doing some powerful things, and there are some things that you don't know about that are probably happening very close to you, specifically in your state. There's things you've heard news stories recently, and you're like, hell yeah, this is happening. It's not happening the way you think it is, because, again, the mainstream media would love to deceive you and make you think, because it's all part of a big nefarious plot to make sure that everything stays swept under the rug. These people do not want to be exposed. And in the next episode, we're going to expose the shit out of them. So
I'm going to come on like a wrecking ball and destroy everyone's dreams.
Name names. I have no problem.
No
problem. Kayleigh, thank you.
Thank you
for coming on the show. Tune in for the next episode. In the meantime, watch chad.com. That's where the fun stuff is. Boy, I feel even guilty saying that now that we've had such a heavy episode. God, I'm going to go take a shower. I really, and not like your coach. I'm the problem. I'm come out fully clothed. I just want to feel dirty at this thing.
I know, and these are hard conversations, but they're very real. And
well, the thing about that is, you and I have communicated, and even hanging out with you, you're very real, and you also have a sense of humor. You were talking about earlier how sometimes people think you're kind of an ice queen and it's like, yeah, believe that about me, which is great.
Do you know how many people ask me, like strangers, for my OnlyFans?
People are assholes.
I'm not kidding. We were at a baseball game. I with all 5 of my kids, and my husband was standing there, and some guy's like, "Hey, can I get your OnlyFans?" And my husband almost died.
So CJ, who came by to meet you, but we were in the middle of the thing, she texted me a little while ago, and she wants to come back by and say hi. She didn't want to interrupt us. Well, she could have interrupted us. We could have edited her out. We could have put the hugs in there, but we were at an event one time. CJ's had that too.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Where guys will walk up right in front of your kids, and be like, "Hey, what's your OnlyFans?"
Yeah. And I don't have an OnlyFans. For the
Nor
record.
do I.
I mean,
just to be clear.
Listen, I have thought about jumping ship from what I do and becoming a millionaire. It sounds like a more, I don't know, like monetary wise, it's a better plan for my life, but that's not what God has called me to do. So.
I'm going to become a woke liberal. I'm going to become a progressive broke liberal. I'm a woke liberal, broke liberal, whatever. It's all the same. I'm going to be pro-Palestine, all the stuff. It's easier. It's just easier these days.
Well, I'm in this for the good fight, and
I think I'm a transgender black woman at this point.
Oh, lovely.
Yes, I am.
I mean, you can be whatever you want to be. I think it's important, though.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, B, whatever you want to be.
I think it's important to, people see my purpose, but they don't see the pain that's brought me here, which we'll get into.
Sure.
But I choose God's calling over my comfort. And that's what this boils down to.
Yeah. And you're real about it.
Yeah.
You're real about it. I like that.
I'm real fucking real about
Drop
it.
a couple of F-bombs in there because we're real about it. This is a whole, and you know what? I will say this. My audience has heard me say this a million times. You don't like certain language or whatever, don't get caught up in that stuff. There's an arena there, and there's an arena that you're in. There's an arena she's in. There's an arena I'm in. Don't you worry about the language we use when we enter that arena. Okay, damn it.
I love Jesus, but I cuss a lot.
I cuss a whole lot. I put a T-shirt out a couple of years ago that says I've got whiskey stains on my Bible. There were a lot of people that got pissed off, but it was a bestseller. We're going to bring it back.
It must be lonely at the top.
We'll be back with episode 2, Kayleigh Kozak. Don't forget, follow her on social media. That's down there as well. Check her out. You're going to be truly inspired by following her, and you're going to love her. But we got more to say, so come back for the next episode. We love you. God bless you. We'll talk to you then. Bye.